Hello, hello. This is a Kubernetes community meeting, May 21st edition, 2020. This is a community meeting that is live streamed. It will be publicly posted on YouTube, so be mindful that what you say is being recorded. A reminder that we have a code of conduct, so be excellent to each other. I'm Mark Modrinic, and I will be your host today. I work for Lucy, and you may know me for contributors to SIG release and SIG cluster lifecycle. I am a release manager associate. I also maintain the cluster API provider for DigitalOcean project and some other open source project. I am really happy to be here today. So let's get started. I would like to remind you that you should mute your mic when you're not speaking. And I will just quickly share, do we have a note taker? It seems like we don't. So if you want to do so, please leave your name in the document. I can also share a quick link in the chat.
We can start the release section, and I'll find a note taker.
Okay, so let's start with release updates. We have the current release, the development cycle update from the release rate. Taylor, do you want to take over?
Absolutely. So I don't have any slides to share, but would kind of love to walk you through everything going on with 119. So as of Tuesday, which I believe is 2 days ago, it's hard to keep track these days, we had 119.0 beta 0 release come out, which is fantastic. We did have a enhancements freeze as of the end of day Pacific time on Tuesday as well. So far, we've gotten a few exceptions and are working through that right now. And then I'm going to be dropping the link into the meeting agenda, but did want to bring up the 119 retrospective as well. As we work through the 119 release, we're always happy to get feedback, good, bad, things we can improve, and we'll be dropping that there. It's always better to put things in as they come up rather than try to remember what had happened at the end of the release, as just a general note. Hope all of you are doing well, and can't wait to see you next time and update you with what's going on in 119. Back to you, sir.
Okay, thank you for the update. That sounds good. I think the next is the patch release updates. I'm not sure who is handled that, but
I can speak to it briefly. We did releases yesterday on all the patch release branches, 118, 117, and 116. And we're in a monthly cadence at this point, so the expectation would be next patch releases mid-June. And that's the update.
thank you so much for the update, team. Okay, the next on the agenda is SIG updates. We have 4 updates this month, starting with testing, UI, API machinery, and usability. The first update is from Aaron for SIG testing. You can take over.
Thanks, Marco. Setting my stopwatch so I stick to real world time instead of Aaron time for this update. So I'm going to share my screen, but I'm going to be lazy and not go full screen, so I may spoil some of my surprises here. Hi, everybody. I'm Aaron Krickenberger. I'm one of the chairs of SIG testing. Today's cat t-shirt is my favorite cat t-shirt of all time. It's the 114 Kubernetes Caternetes t-shirt. The first big bit of news I have about SIG testing is Eric Feda, who has been SIG testing chair for a number of years, has decided to step down and has nominated Ben the Elder in his place. It's super excited to see the spirit of rotation. It's a sign of a healthy community, and I think Ben has done a lot of wonderful things for this community, so I can't wait to work further with him. Just a brief tour of some of the things we've done since our last update in October 2019. It's not really specifically under a sub-project. This is more like general test health stuff. We decided collectively as a group back in December to stop automatically retrying E2E tests if there was a flake in there. We did this because it was hiding some real world bugs that we soon discovered once we turned this off. For example, we found a race condition in run C, one of our upstream dependencies, and Kubernetes has become more robust for it. One of the things we did to help us with this was to update our triage dashboard to support inclusion and exclusion by regex. So a quick demo here. Go.k8s.io/triage is like my favorite thing ever for finding flakes and failures. It shows you a graph of all of the test failures and job failures for a given time. We can see that the top flake that has occurred most recently has the error text timed out waiting for the condition, my favorite error text of all time. So I'd like to find tests that don't have that, because that's kind of really difficult for me to troubleshoot and diagnose. So if I exclude tests that have that as their failure text, I can see that there's what looks to be a persistent volume failure happening in some of the CSI related jobs. So that might be something I could go do to be helpful. We have continued to make progress on improving the E2E coverage of kind. It now covers about 85% of what our regular E2E tests do that spin up an entire Kubernetes cluster in the cloud. We've also been using kind to make sure that when an enhancement graduates to stable or generally available, we keep it honest and make sure it's only using stable and generally available APIs, which has caught a couple things already. And then finally, for those of you who are on the release team or do CI signal stuff, you might have already noticed we removed a bunch of stale GKE jobs that seem to be continuously failing. So test grids failures are a lot more meaningful. Just some general things we're planning for 2020. I'll talk more about this later, but we're planning to move all of the jobs over to community-owned infrastructure, and would really welcome your help for that. Planning on putting together a sort of a project health dashboard that can give us an idea of merge times and flake rates and test failures and stuff over time. And we're planning on sort of redoing the tool that we use for many of our CI jobs, kubetest. So we're planning on doing a kubetest 2 that's a little bit more modular, less monolithic, and will be a little bit more pluggable for alternative cluster provisioning mechanisms. SIG testing has a number of sub-projects. One of them is Boscos. Boscos is responsible for managing pools of resources. We generally use it to manage GCP projects, so we can create a cluster in there and then blow it away at the end of that. It's turning into, it's migrating out of the test infra repo, moving into its own repo. There's been a number of performance improvements to Boscos lately. So for example, kind, maybe my favorite sub-project ever, Kubernetes and Docker. Since October 2019, kind has had 3 releases. As of kind 0.6, we started using kind to block merges and releases of the Kubernetes project. Kind 0.7 added support for persistent volumes, thanks to Rancher's local volume provisioner. And one of the most asked for features for kind 0.8 is the fact that clusters now survive reboots. Prow is the thing that does all of the CI for the Kubernetes project. We've improved our security stance with Prow by using workload identity instead of having a bunch of secret files passed around everywhere. We've updated Prow's reporting capability to dump a number of artifacts into GCS related to the execution of the job itself. I don't have a great demo of showing how it can give hints about why your job may have failed, but now if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll see this job pod info section where I can see more information about the actual pod that ran the job, including events about when it got scheduled. If I really love my YAML that much, I can look at the entire YAML-based manifest for the pod to help me with troubleshooting. We also have started to move to support for remote spyglass lenses. So a spyglass lens is a piece of code that describes how to display a given artifact So in this page that I'm loading up, for example, there's a JUnit lens, there's a coverage lens, and there's a build log lens. These are all currently baked inside of the Spyglass code base, but it is now possible for you to write your own Spyglass lens remotely in a more modular and extensible fashion. I look forward to seeing what we can do from this. We've got better support for build clusters. So the idea with Prow is you sort of have the Prow control plane, and then you have the build cluster where you actually run everything. We're now using that in the community so that we can run Prow jobs not just in the google.com owned build cluster, but also in the community owned Kubernetes.io build cluster. Upcoming for Prow, we're looking to have a staging Prow instance with an automated continuous deployment mechanism and end-to-end tests. We're looking at the idea of maybe segmenting the front end you see for Prow so you could get restricted views of just the jobs you or your SIG cares about. And we're improving the security posture of Prow by automatically rotating some of its web tokens. Testing Commons is the sub-project that's all about like how to have best practices for writing tests and make them better. They're currently working to try and migrate the E2E test framework into the staging repo so it could be consumable outside of the main Kubernetes project. So you wouldn't have to try to vendor the entire Kubernetes repo, which is a bad and painful idea. We've also started leaning into using import boss to make sure that dependencies aren't used where they're not supposed to be, especially for tests to aid in this decoupling. And there's been tons and tons of refactoring work to just try and clean up in general. It's a great place to sort of get started with some relatively mechanical work if you want to dip your toes into the community. One of the working groups SIG testing is involved in is the K8s Infra working group. This is where we're taking all of the project infrastructure and making sure it runs in a place that's community owned and managed. So as of today, we now run all of the DNS, all of the artifacts, most of the artifact hosting, automated groups reconciliation over there. The publishing bot, which is responsible for pushing the staging repos out to their own repos, is there. Some of the latest additions are a performance dashboard and the Slack infrastructure that helps make it possible to moderate our ridiculously large Slack instance. And as I alluded to earlier, coming soon, we're going to be moving all of the images used in Kubernetes over to k8s.gcr.io. We tried that once, didn't quite work out. We'll be trying it again, hopefully soon. There are community-owned build clusters there that people can help operate and troubleshoot. Some of the KEPs that were related to, I'm almost there. Some of the KEPs that are on our plate, image whitelist, we're helping out with the yearly support period for Kubernetes, and like I said, moving E2E framework to staging. How you can help, I just want to give a shout out to SIGNode for putting a group of people together to actively evaluate their tests. What are they? How do they work? Do they need them? How can they support them? And I have links here to help you diagnose flaky tests and look for some help wanted issues. Okay, almost 11 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, for such a great update. And big congrats to new chairs. It's nice to hear news. And up next, we have Jeffy and Sigwai. You can take over with this one.
Sweet. Before I start, say hello to Midna. She's my co-presenter. All right, SigUI. It's been a while since we've presented. The big thing that we have done recently is we released 2.0 of the dashboard. We have talked about what 2.0 was for a couple of our previous updates because it's been kind of a Herculean undertaking. We essentially scrapped the entirety of our front end and redid it from scratch because we were several versions of Angular out of date, and now we are not. So hooray. Amongst other things we did with the 2.0 update, we had to upgrade our client Go. There were a bunch of bugs that we found, and we just increased our usability. So hooray, very happy. This was huge. Thanks to everyone that has helped with this. I just realized I didn't do that. My bad. What else have we done? We have had a lot of translation work that's occurred in the last few cycles, both just in general improvement as well as completely new translations. On top of that, all the translation work we have wound up delegating to specific and trusted people that have come to help out, and much love to them. In terms of community, we actually promoted a new sub-project owner, Shu Muto. He has been helping us out for over a year, and his help has been invaluable. Another thing is one of our chairs has stepped down and moved on to more awesome things. We would love to shout out Daniel Romline and wish him all the best. Our plans for next upcoming cycles, 2.0 was kind of a big thing, so we really have some time allotted just for settling and finding new bugs and fixing them. One of the big things that we've been wanting to do, and we should be able to start now that 2.0 is out, is having better OAuth support natively within the dashboard. A bit of history regarding the backend rework. When the dashboard first came out, there were a lot of features that Kubernetes didn't have at the time. And so it made sense for the dashboard to actually re-implement a lot of different features that Client Go now has. So one thing that we're looking to do is kind of like what we did with the 2.0 rework and completely rewriting the front end. We now want to go back and redo a lot of the back end work, because we can make a lot of headway in both just performance as well as reaching feature parity with other different projects. And the last thing is more integrations. One of the ideas that we've been kicking around for at least a year is, wouldn't it be nice if through the dashboard you could actually like list all of your different Helm charts and maybe be able to install Helm charts, things like that. Just integrations with other front end projects within the community. So that's what we're going to start looking into next. If you have any weird cross-section of JavaScript and Golang experience and knowledge, we would love to hear from you. This slide is out of date because the Angular migration is done. But we also just want to hear from anyone and everyone that wants to use Kubernetes from like a UI perspective. If you want to find us, we're in Slack. We're very responsive in Slack. Our email is right there, SIGUI.
Thank you for the update, Jeff.
And of course, midway through, my co-presenter decided to leave me, so I'm a little sad. Actually, she's just right there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Up next, we have SIG API machinery, and Federico will take over.
Hello, everybody. Let me share my screen. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Hello, very happy to be here. Thank you for giving us the time. What we did on the last cycle, I'm calling it since our last presentation that was done by one of my other co-chair, David Itz, on October 2019. I think the most important things to highlight are the ones that I have listed in this slide. So number one, priority and fairness. This is a really important feature. It's a step forward to guarantee the stability of API server. As probably all of you know, everything in Kubernetes talks through API server, so everybody is trying to get API server's attention. And some of the situations that have aroused in the past is that, for example, the controller goes crazy and hijacks all the bandwidth. In practice, API server cannot perform basic tasks like health checks or garbage collection. So this is a feature that it's really important looking into the stability and making it more reliable for the future. It's in alpha in 1.18. Don't be fooled by the alpha qualificator. I think it's in a really stable state. We still need to do some scalability testing and some more testing in general, but the feature is looking really solid. And this is really a community-driven effort. Many people from different companies, Mike Sprates, Lavalamp, David Itz, and many, many others. So really happy on this one. Next one is server-side apply, which you've been hearing for a long time. Finally is enabled in all the server-side requests. Huge step forward, until the last minute, not the last minute, but the last cycle, there were some performance questions. We were able to overcome all of them. So we are going to talk about the next steps in the next slide, but server-side apply now in 1.18 is running through all the requests. kubectl dry run and kubectl diff, which are popular tools that we've been developing in the past, are GA in 1.18, so yay. Related to that, the working group apply, that is the group that historically has been dealing with server-side apply, now has expanded, and we call it now working group API expressions. So it englobes more things than only server-side apply. So you can look at the backlog over there. One important note there is that if you were part of the working group apply meetings, or from time to time you wanted to go to those bi-weekly meetings and you want to still be involved, there is a new mailing list to be subscribed, so you get the new invites. I sent an email a couple of days ago, but you can reach me if you don't know what to do. And then the other thing that we have promoted is the KEP that David has been working on, which doesn't allow, in a nutshell, doesn't allow features or APIs to stay in beta forever in this, ether state. So either they go back to being demoted or they are promoted to GA. So I think this is a great step forward, in the ecosystem of Kubernetes and Kubernetes APIs. Related to these, three more things that are not essentially API machinery, but very close to us. You probably heard of the SSH tunnels that are part of our code. They have been deprecated for a long time, and we are working on this new side project that is called Network Proxy in order to replace them. Network Proxy is beta in 1.18, and we are doing large scalability testing to make sure that it's a reliable mechanism to be able to finally get rid of the SSH tunnels. We've been working very close with Sync instrumentation to promote the stability of the metrics that we emit as part of our telemetry. So basically, the KEP that I have linked in the slides, what says, in a very short summary, is that metrics should be treated with the same importance as an API almost. So you cannot just change them and deprecate them, create new ones. That breaks all of our systems in all of our companies. So I think it's a very important step forward too. And finally, you may have noticed head Kubernetes in API machinery is running etcd 347. That brings a lot of stability improvements. Many of the people that work in API machinery are familiar with etcd, and they also collaborate in the open source etcd project. etcd 3.4 is especially important because of four things. I'm going to say very quickly. Now we have concurrent reads. So, when you are not writing transactions, the reads can be concurrent. There is a new feature that is called no voting members. So you can add members to the cluster that don't have voting power, but allows the cluster to scale horizontally. There is improved graph consensus, and there is a better load balancing logic from the etcd client. So that is in a nutshell what we have done. What are we planning to do for Kubernetes in the next cycles? So server-side apply, the next step is to make it default in the client side. So we are working on that. Not in 1.19 probably. There is a lot of things that need to happen. We are looking more at 1.20, and we will see if that happens. For priority and fairness, we had a large discussion to define the beta criteria. So when can we call this feature beta? That has been arrived to a consensus point. So now we know what needs to happen. Important step forward. There is a number of KEPs that we are also trying to move forward. Resource version semantics made consistent. Basically, when you list resources, there is a bunch of inconsistencies that you can experiment. So this is a way of getting rid of that. David and many other people have been working on the next two, which is standardize the way that you define client QPS in kubeconfig. And then the other one is for all the Kubernetes APIs to standardize the way that we expose status conditions. Most of our APIs have a way of expressing this field, but it's not consistent across the board. So we are trying to make that unified. A number of things that are following that is things that are not new, but they take some time. The definition of immutable fields, being able to declare immutable field in your APIs and in your CRDs. We are also working on pushing forward storage migrator to GA, which is a side tool that allows you to make sure that when you are upgrading to a newer version of Kubernetes with a newer schema, all the objects are going to be migrated successfully. And if not, maybe you can make the decision of stopping the upgrade. The other one for CRDs, we promoted CRDs to GA in 1.16, but there is a lot of backlog work post-GA that we are exploring and trying to also make progress on. Binary transport is one of the most important ones. So that requires some work and attention, but it's in our backlog. And what else? The last three are related to things that I mentioned in the previous slide. We are making progress in the deprecation of the SSH tunnels. So doing large scalability testing on the network proxy. The warning mechanism for deprecated APIs, I recommend to watch the recording of the meeting of API Machinery, SIG API Machinery, where Jordan presented this. Really important to be able to detect when you are using APIs that are deprecated to avoid surprises when you face an upgrade in the future and something disappears or changes.
About a minute left.
Yes, I'm almost done. And then in 1.19, we are upgrading etcd to 3.4.9. You can see everything is linked here, so you can see why is that important and what improvements it brings. Where can you find us? We meet every 2 weeks in the SIG meeting. We do twice a week bug triages and PR triages. So if there is something that you are submitting or you are interested in participating, just join us, open meetings. And there is two working groups, API expression that I explained, and the KubeBuilder and SDK working group too, meet every 2 weeks. Who are we? David Eads, Daniel Smith, and me, and some useful links for you, our homepage and all the recording of our meetings. That's it.
Thank you for the update, Federico. Nice to see a lot of stuff happening there. And we are ready to go to the last SIG update for this month. And this is going to be SIG usability. And Valerie.
All right. Hi, everyone. Slide shared, okay?
Yep, looks good.
Thanks. So quick membership update. We have had one chair move to it emeritus. So thank her for her work with SIG. We still have 3 active chairs. The main thing that we've done in the last number of months is finally polished and released our initial user survey. So we have a medium-sized survey that we have circulating right now. Thanks to the CNCF for their help with that. Once this survey is finally closed, I don't recall the date for that. We're going to be going through all the user responses for that. So if you are able to circulate the survey internally, or especially if you have customers who are using Kubernetes, this would be quite helpful to get an idea of the kinds of experiences people are having and some of their priorities and struggling points. In particular, I really want to thank Gabby Moreau from the SIG for driving this. She's been instrumental in making sure that the survey gets out and happens. So on the note of the survey, once we actually have some data put together and once we've gone over the responses, we will probably be reaching out to a number of SIGs if we identify key problem areas or places to share feedback. As well, we'd like to understand, given that SIG usability comes from very different backgrounds, more of some of the technical specifics that people bring up. And also with this survey, we're hoping to codify some of our practices around things like data collection and good question asking, such that SIGs have a easier path forward for running surveys themselves to give hopefully stronger results. So we did a little bit of exploratory work as well on trying to introduce safer defaults to the project. That has stalled due to lack of bandwidth and some complexities in the inspected areas. In particular, given that we're now a 1.0 project, there is a major uphill battle to change any kind of default expected behavior. So if anyone is interested in helping to further this work, especially coming from stakeholder SIGs, that would be vastly appreciated. We are now starting to look at issue labeling for usability related issues. We still need to codify more of what exactly that means, because I don't think that a usability issue and a feature request are necessarily two concentric circles. Once we have a definition for that, we're going to be talking with SIG Contrib-X and then hopefully trying to go out and actually make sure those labels get applied to new issues. And lastly, for how you can contribute, we are exceedingly bandwidth constrained. There are only a few number of people working with SIG usability, and most of them, it's a very distant concern, either because they're volunteering completely on their own or because it's a tertiary or lower job responsibility. So this is a potential opportunity for big impact if you or your organization has the bandwidth to work more on usability design and working with some of the specific technical problems. We would love to have you. I didn't actually put our meeting time, but it's every third Tuesday at 9 a.m. And we also have that all on the SIG page in GitHub. Great, thank you. That's all we have.
Thank you for the update, Valerie. And this is it from the SIG updates for this month. And now we are ready to go ahead to announcements. The first one is an update about the KubeCon Virtual Contributor Summit, and Jeff is going to take over and tell us a little bit more.
Hello again. It is actually just a reiteration. We sent an email out to KDev, but we have decided to cancel the Virtual Contributor Summit, which would have been the equivalent of the EU Contributor Summit. It made a lot of sense because then the staff can turn over and start working on Boston, and it lets us focus and make sure that our next Contributor Summit is just a much better experience rather than trying to rush to plan a contributor summit that then turned into a virtual summit, and then suddenly we have a contributor summit that is less than 4 months away from the next one. So it just made a whole lot of sense to kind of cancel that and then start looking at Boston. I linked the email that was sent out, so that was the big one.
Okay, thank you for the update, Jeff. Up next, I would like to announce the next month's host who will be, and that's going to be Laurie Apple. And I would just like to say that if you want to be a host, then we are looking up for contributors who are going to take over, and you can ping us in the SIG Contrib-X Slack channel. And then, do we have any other announcements or anything other that is going to be mentioned? Oh, in chat, Bob said that the new contributor workshop is still going to happen as a virtual event, but it is not going to happen alongside virtual KubeCon.
Yeah, I can talk on that a little bit. That was my bad for not also mentioning that. The goal is for the new contributor workshop to happen sometime during the summer, and we're going to start doing the new contributor workshops kind of in between KubeCons with the hope that doing them online means we have more reach. And also it means that the current contributors that were normally diverted to working on the new contributor workshop during summits can actually partake in the summit more. And one final benefit is then the contributors summit may actually have more attendance as we try and get additional contributors through the NCW track. So, boom.
Okay, thank you once again for the update. The last call for announcements. Do we have something else to mention? Okay, so the next thing is in the agenda is shoutouts. And we have a Slack channel on the Kubernetes Slack, which is called shoutouts, and it is used to, if you want to mention something that has been done by someone. And in the past month, we have a whole page of mentions about the awesome things that folks were doing. I'm not going to go through each entry right now, but you have the list in the meeting notes. It will also be posted in the Kubernetes Dev mailing list and in the Discuss thread on Discuss Kubernetes IO. And as far as I see, we are coming up to the end of this agenda and to the end of this meeting. So I would like to ask, is there anything for the final, anything anyone wants to mention or something like that? First call? Twice? Third? Okay, this seems like we came to the end of the meeting. I would like to thank you all for joining today and for being awesome. And I think that this is it. Thank you.
Thanks, Marco.